Chris Sale has been fantastic to start the year for the Atlanta Braves, and with a loss of Spencer Strider, some fans are questioning whether or not Chris Sale is the new ace of the staff. I'll answer that question and many more on today's Mailbag episode of Locked On Braves, so let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Check out the podcast there as well at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast. If you're new and watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're there, hit that thumbs up button as well so other people can see the show and join us here at Locked On Braves. If you're listening on the audio version, thank you so much for your support. If you would drop me a 5-star review, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks to all the support you give me here at Locked On Braves. And if you're an everydayer, let me know down in the comment section below. Or if you enjoy some of our great sponsors, let me know that as well. Love reading those comments from you on YouTube, social media, wherever it may be. You do a great job of supporting me here at Locked On Braves. It is a Mailbag Friday episode. We're doing a live edition late on Thursday night. I got a lot of off days here lately, so I know you all enjoy these live episodes, so try to do as much as I can during the season. Before we get into our questions today, though, I want to let you know that it's brought to you by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to choose from to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, it is our Mailbag episode, so we got a wide array of questions to answer today. Looking forward to getting into those. Before I do those, shout out to Patrick McCarthy, Cody Brown, Jeffrey Humphrey, CJ Palmer, Argenis, Chris Fields, Ecuadorman, and Leland, who are all here in here with me live tonight on Thursday. Thank you so much for joining. And our first question comes from Ecuadorman, who says, who's your ace at this moment in the season? All starters have been good. Lately, mine is Chris Sale. So it's an interesting question to think about. With the loss of Spencer Strider, I think many people just assume that Max Fried is the ace. I guess a lot of it depends on what you consider an ace to be. I talk a lot about this with Max Fried, the fact that he is not somebody that's going to go out there and just overpower you. However, when he's on, as we've seen these past two starts, he is somebody that can still go out there and just dominate you. But it's not, I guess, what we would consider the traditional sense of dominating in today's game, where if you don't throw 95 plus, which Max Fried can, and you're not racking up the strikeouts, then you're not a good pitcher. You're not an elite pitcher. And I think that's held Max Fried back from being considered among those top pitchers in baseball, but just because he doesn't get those elite strikeout rates, but he's still very, very good. And again, when he's on, like we've seen lately, he has that ability to still dominate a lineup. But there's a reason that Spencer Strider started opening day this year. There's a reason Spencer Strider started game one of the postseason last year. You want guys who are going to miss bats, especially in the postseason. There's just too much that can go wrong when a baseball goes into play, and you want to limit those opportunities as much as possible. And for Max Fried, as great as he is, as much as I love watching him pitch, because he is more of a pitch-to-contact type of pitcher, there are games where he's going to give up 7, 8 hits, and it's going to lead to some crooked numbers because he is pitching to contact. And even though it's weak contact, sometimes those sneak through the infield. Sometimes those drop in to the outfield. We've seen it happen before. Even looking in the postseason, you look at Max Fried, he'll have starts where he gives up, 3, 4 runs, but they don't come back the next start like he did in the clinching game of Game 6 in the 2021 World Series, and he's just untouchable. And that's just who Max Fried is. But in those spots, game on the line, season on the line, you would prefer a pitcher that is going to miss bats and going to limit those opportunities for balls in play. And I got to say right now, Chris Sale does a better job of that. A 95th percentile in chase percentage for Chris Sale, 75th percentile in whip percentage, 81st percentile in strikeout percentage, and 86th percentile in walk percentage. So not only is he not walking anybody, he's not giving out any free bases, which is what you want in a big game type of spot. He's getting hitters to chase out of the zone. He's getting the strikeouts. So again, it all just kind of depends on your definition of an ace. Look, in my mind, Max Fried is still the ace of this Atlanta Braves team. He's just label-wise deserves that. But right now, I think if you're asking me who do I want in game one of a postseason, just because of the criteria I laid out, I think Chris Sale has a good argument. So we have a long season left to go for things to play out. And obviously Max Fried got up to a rough start. But, if Max Fried is pitching like he's capable, I think he's probably a better pitcher than Chris Sale and able to go deeper into the games. But again, when you look at how the two get it done, Chris Sale just gets it done in a more dominating fashion because he's missing more bats. He's getting more strikeouts. And that's really, what you want the most out of a pitcher in today's game. So it's a really good question. I don't know that I particularly answered it for you, but again, it's great. I'll say this. After losing Spencer Strider, you had two aces in Spencer Strider and Max Fried. And it's great to see that Chris Sale has somewhat replaced that. He's not Spencer Strider, at least not at this point in his career. Spencer Strider was becoming Chris Sale early in his career. I don't think Chris Sale is quite that. But now you're looking at two guys at the top of the rotation again, and Fried and Chris Sale, that you feel really good about going up against any other team's 1 and 2 starters. So that makes me very, very happy. But again, we're only 1 month through the season. Long way to go. Got to keep those two guys healthy and fresh for the end of the year. But it's a great position to be in with the Braves to have those two guys going the way that they are. Next question from, let's move down here. I want to get to prospects a little bit later. Eric8504 says, would you make any changes in our batting order? If so, what? A lot of questions about this lately as well. People wondering if the Braves need to switch up the batting order or not. I don't. I think you have to trust that Acuna, Riley, and Olson are going to get it going. And I don't know that shuffling the lineup around is going to make that happen sooner. I don't know that it's necessarily going to make things much better. Look, everybody right now outside of really Ozuna and Michael Harris are struggling a bit at the plate. I do think you need to put Michael Harris behind Ozuna and leave him in a 6 spot with Arcia cooling off and move him down a little bit and have, the catcher and Arcia batting 7th and 8th with Kelenic in the 9 spot. That's one change I would make, but I wouldn't make any changes at the top. I think you have to ride it out with Acuna. Acuna is still the right guy for the leadoff spot. He's still getting on base, and when he does that, he's generally creating havoc and scoring runs. I mean, could you maybe – and Riley's making good swings and is getting it going, so I don't really see a move to swap him and Ozuna at the moment. And then you want that left-handed bat behind Riley there for protection. And as good as Michael Harris has been average-wise, he hasn't necessarily brought the power that you want for that 4 spot in the lineup. So all that to say, I really wouldn't change things too much. I think you just got to ride it out and hope that these guys get going. And who knows, you move Ozuna up into the 3 hole, maybe that puts more pressure on himself and, he starts to struggle a good bit. And then who else are you really putting up there? Who else are you moving up in the lineup? Like I said, RC is cooled off. You're not putting Duvall or Jared Kelenic up there. Michael Harris has been good. He's more of an average hitter. I'm not saying average as in he's an average person, but a batting average type of hitter. He hasn't necessarily shown the power just yet, and he hasn't really excelled in the 2 spot when he's gotten the opportunities to hit there. So I think you leave those guys alone. I think it takes some of the pressure off of them, and you just hope the top of that order gets things rolling here pretty soon. All right, I want to get to a lot more questions. I really wanted to focus a lot on that first one there because I think it's an interesting one, and I want to know your thoughts. Who is your ace right now of the Braves? If game 1 of the postseason started tomorrow, who would you pitch in game 1? Would it be Chris Sale? Would it be Max Fried? Would it be Ronaldo Lopez? He's been great to start the season. I would put him behind those two. But who would you have pitching in game 1 of the postseason if it started today? Let me know down in the comments section below. But a lot of other questions to get to, some great questions that you've all submitted. I'll get to the rest of those here next. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your Beagle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, Ronald Acuna Jr. is into all of those things. eBay Motors is as well, and they've got you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That's ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports, ESPN on your TV all day? You're constantly having to turn it down or mute it just because some other nonsense that Stephen A. Smith said again about trying to talk about baseball. Do yourself a favor and make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Been a really fun week here on the podcast. If you missed it, because I dropped it Thursday afternoon, not a typical time for me to drop an episode, I did a crossover with Jeff Snyder from Locked On Dodgers previewing this upcoming series this weekend. So if you haven't watched that already, make sure you go back and do so. Great conversation with him, just generally talking about the two teams that most people consider to be the best two teams in baseball and the World Series favorites. So good conversation that I had with him. So please go give that a listen. A lot of you say you love the crossover episodes. You love when I bring guests on, but to be honest, the views don't actually show that. So if you do enjoy those episodes, make sure that you give those a watch or a listen so we can continue to do those, because I find them rather enjoyable myself. Let's jump back into the questions here. Another one from Eric8504. He says, what position prospect in our minor system do you like to help the ball club this year? None. I hate to say that, but JP Martinez, if you want to consider him a prospect, I guess technically Forrest Wall would be considered a prospect still, but JP Martinez off to a really good start at AAA. He has some power, speed, potential, certainly some swing and miss in his game that's a little bit concerning, but there aren't any position player prospects right now in this system that I am looking at this year to come up and make a difference. And honestly, where would you put them? There's just no spot in this lineup right now that you're going to put somebody. If something happens on the infield, they're going to go to Guillorme or David Fletcher. If something happens in the outfield, you have Duvall or Kelnick, whichever, to fill in there. If something happens to one of them, then you're looking at probably Forrest Wall or JP Martinez. So there's just not a lot of places to go. There's not a lot of holes to fill. And I feel like those already have replacement players. So there's not a position player prospect right now in the minor league system that I think is going to help the ball club this year. Caleb Calhoun says, any news on Sean Murphy? Haven't heard the slightest on the Murphy front. Timeline, any baseball activity like BP or bullpen sessions? If both catchers are healthy, is Tromp riding it out at AAA until Darno's contract is out next year, assuming club option is picked up? So a lot to cover there. I think as long as TDA is healthy, I think that contract's going to get picked up. Tromp, hopefully they can keep him around in AAA as he's great depth, but you also have Drake Baldwin that is coming and sounds like he's making progress behind the plate. As for Sean Murphy, I want to say the latest on him is that he's been catching bullpen sessions, but has not yet been swinging. So it sounds like he's still a good bit away from coming back, but he is at least doing some form of baseball activities now at this point. So that's great to hear. Not great that it could be a while longer. Caden Hurd says, where do the Braves go in pitching? Could the Braves bring in a Mike Clevenger for a last chance? So Clevenger signed with the White Sox. I think he's getting set to make his 2024 debut with them. A little too early at this point to say where the Braves could go, and the rotation has been great. There's really no reason to even think about that at this point unless another injury comes up, and let's hope that doesn't happen. But the starting rotation seems to be settling in a little bit, and we're a while before the trade deadline, so a lot of things could happen before then, but I don't think there's really any reason right now to worry about what the Braves are going to do starting pitching-wise this season. Braves 2021 World Series champ says, what are your thoughts on people saying Olson changed his swing? I've seen a lot of people saying that, but there hasn't been any visual evidence of it being true. It does seem off, though. I mean, it seems off because he's not getting the results, but I keep pointing this out. When he is making contact right now, he is still hitting the ball extremely hard. He has just been extremely unlucky. You look at his expected WOBA, it's 88th percentile right now at 377. His expected batting average is 265. His actual average is 206. He's still 97th percentile in average exit velocity, 88th percentile in barrel percentage, 99th percentile in hard hit percentage. When he is making contact, he is still squaring the baseball up. It has just been an unfortunate streak of bad luck for him. And when he's not making contact, he is striking out way too much at the moment. 26% strikeout rate. That's not terrible. It's only 2% above, where he is, maybe 3% above where he was last year. But still, it just seems like he's in a really bad funk right now where he is striking out too much. And when he's putting the ball in play, he's just not getting the results that he deserves for his swing. So I know fans don't want to hear that because they're just looking at the results and they're not there right now for him. But I'm telling you, just be patient. He is still making really good contact. He's just been really unlucky here as of late. I will say, you asked about the swing for Matt Olson. I don't see anything drastic, but I'll say with that swing that he has and the way that he holds his hands out front, I do think that's something that he's going to have to constantly kind of tinker with to be able to stay on time with that. There's still not a lot of movement in the hands, which is what worries me for hitters like that start with their hands out like that they then have to cock them back and then come forward. He doesn't really have to do that, and he kind of keeps them already cocked and just throws the hands at the baseball. But it is a little bit of an unusual swing, but I don't see anything differently. And again, the results, at least expected results, have been there and say that nothing is wrong with the batted ball data when he's making contact. He's just striking out too much, and the batted ball luck has been terrible for him so far. Weston Whitfield says, we look pretty solid everywhere, but are there any trade deadline targets you think A will try and go after? Again, it's too early for me to even look at trade deadline targets at the moment. I will say, and I've said this multiple times, I do think they'll look to add at least a depth piece in the rotation. I don't think it's going to be anything significant, but I think they'll add another depth piece, mid-rotation type of arm, just because of the fact that the last two postseasons, you've had injuries, illness that have happened down the stretch that have hurt your rotation going into the postseason. So I would think Alex Anthopoulos would want to create as much depth as possible there at the deadline, not knowing what may happen in those last 2 months. So I think regardless, it would not surprise me if he looks to at least add a mid-rotation type of starter. But at this point, I just don't see anything significant happening at the trade deadline. But again, we're still months away from that happening and really getting into that discussion. Big Dog Fan 73, with all the guys at high A looking strong and Waldrop and double A looking good, when will they start moving up the ranks? And where is Lara and why isn't Guanipa in low A? So Giancarlo Lara actually just got put on the Rome roster. They had kept him back in extended spring training just to kind of limit his workload, but he is with Rome now, so we're going to start seeing him pitch some, and I would imagine even now they're still probably going to limit his innings a little bit. It's a young arm, not a lot of mileage on there. They want to be extra careful with him. Guanipa is still really young, so at this point I would imagine they're going to start him off in rookie ball, hopefully in the Arizona Complex League, so he's at least statewide or stateside, so that maybe we get a look at him in Augusta later this year, but he is still just very young. There's no reason to, push him to full season ball at this point. So I would imagine he's going to start off in one of the complex leagues, and then hopefully we see him in Augusta later this year. He is just 18 years old, so no reason to rush that. For the guys at high A, like Kevin Kilpatrick, like Owen Murphy particularly, it's 1 month. It's 4 starts, I believe, for Owen Murphy. I'd say give it 2 months and probably move Owen Murphy up to double A if he's still pitching like that. Cade Keeler, I was surprised they sent him back to Augusta. I know his last 2 starts haven't been great, but he's somebody I think can move up, pretty quickly. And, let these guys get some look. For Waldrop, it was just the fact that they had too many pitchers at Gwinnett, and I think they still do. There just wasn't a spot for him. Then he got off to a rough start. Now with Bryce Elder up, I believe there's an opening at Gwinnett. So if Waldrop, does kind of get back on track, it wouldn't be surprising if they moved him up pretty quickly. But it's still early in the major league season and especially in the minor league season. So no reason to really move these guys too much at the moment, especially if you don't think they're really going to impact the big league team this season anyway. Just let them get their work in. Leland Hurt says, any ideas as to why our big hitters are struggling? Hopefully they're beginning to get out of it together, but I'm convinced they have turned the corner. I'm not convinced they have turned the corner. And 2, based on pitching performances by starters, do you believe there's a need to pursue additional starters at the trade deadline? I already answered that second question. I don't think there's necessarily a need to pursue a starter at the deadline right now. We're still far out from that, but I do think they will and should look to add some depth there at the deadline regardless. As for the hitters struggling, I've talked about this a lot. Ronald's just, the timing is not there for the fastballs. He's getting constantly destroyed. Pitchers aren't even scared of throwing Acuna a middle fastball right now. He is just not on him, and he has to make that adjustment and figure that out. Austin Riley has made some strides here lately. He's still not recognizing that slider down and away and is chasing that too much. Olson's just striking out too much. I already talked about him, the fact that when he is making contact, he's still making loud contact, just not getting the results at the moment and striking out too much. Big Dog Fan 73 again. He says, what do you think about the fact that our 4 best players, Acuna, Riley, Harris, and Olson, are all underperforming, and we still have the best record in the bigs? Once they come around, and we will really heat up. I think it's a huge testament to the depth of this team. I mean, you were talking about not just 3 of the best hitters in your lineup, 3 of the best hitters in all of baseball are not performing right now, have an OPS around 700 or below, and yet you're still 20-9, best record in the National League. It just speaks a lot to the depth of this team that you can go weeks at a time now. We're looking at where your 3 best hitters aren't producing and you're still winning games. So yes, they will get going. And when that happens, this team is going to go on a huge run and they're just going to start destroying teams. And I cannot wait for that to happen. I got a lot of other questions that I still need to get to. A lot of great ones coming in on today's episode, but I do need to take another quick break here, and then we'll get right back into the questions. Spring training is over. We're now a month into the baseball season, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your prize pick entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBI, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your prize picks entry today. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. And PrizePicks has something for every sports fan out there, whether you're into basketball, hockey, baseball. Obviously, hopefully, if you're listening to this, I would imagine you are. League of Legends, even. I'm not even sure I know what that is, but you can see all that over on PrizePicks. What you're going to do Friday morning, you're going to download the PrizePicks app, use code LOCKEDONMLB to get a first deposit match up to $100. You're going to see a line or a more or less there for Charlie Morton strikeouts, and you're going to pick more or less if you think he is going to get more or less than the strikeouts that they set for Charlie Morton. They'll also have something there for Ronald, his fantasy score, his hit RBI combination, all of that. You're going to see that in the PrizePicks app. So download that app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. And again, it really is that easy with PrizePicks. All right, I've been telling you a lot about Monopoly Go. It is a smash hit mobile game with over 100 that's been downloaded over 150 million times, and 100 million of those have come from listeners of this podcast. On almost every episode, I have at least 1 or 2 of you telling me that you love Monopoly Go, and that tells me that everybody else listening is probably going to enjoy it as well. It is a hit on the classic hit game, Monopoly itself, but you can do it anywhere on the go, on your mobile phone, just like the classic Monopoly game, and you can play it anywhere. You can explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the moon, all while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties, just like in the classic Monopoly, and you can charge your friends rent on those iconic properties or go after their Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking a wrecking ball to their landmarks. But my favorite part is the leaderboards. Obviously, here we're into sports. We're checking those leaderboards every day, and you can do the same thing on Monopoly Go to see who is on top right now. So go get yourself on those charts. Download Monopoly Go free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, got some more questions to get to here, and then we'll try to get into a little bit of preview for the Dodgers series. But again, if you haven't listened to it already, had a crossover episode with Jeff Snyder from Locked On Dodgers, posted that Thursday afternoon. So make sure you go and give that a listen. All right, let's wrap up a couple of more questions here that I haven't gotten to. Next one from Papa Sanders, who says, how long do the Braves wait to move Drew Compton and Owen Murphy up a level? And would you be okay with Nacho just being a good defender that hits 290 with a 370 OBP but little power? Great questions here. Kind of wish I could save these for Miners Monday, which we'll have on this upcoming Monday, as we always do. And first question is kind of similar to one we had earlier, but you mentioned Drew Compton. College bat and Drew Compton, who's still at Augusta, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets moved pretty soon. Coming out of Georgia Tech, like I said, playing in the ACC, should be a little bit more of a developed bat. So the hot start that he's out to, I would not be surprised if he gets the move up. Again, I don't know what the position scarcity depth looks like right now at Rome, but I got to figure Compton's close to getting moved up. We talked about Owen Murphy. Again, unless you think he's going to be part of your rotation this year, and maybe they do. Look, we've seen them be aggressive with guys in the past, but he is with a high school draft pick a couple of years ago, still a young kid. I don't really see the need to rush him. So, give him another handful of starts at Rome, and if he continues to just dominate as he has been, sure, move him up to Double-A. But that gap for me from high A to Double-A is one of the hardest jumps in my mind for prospects. And I feel like if you can handle things at the Double-A level, you're really close. I mean, we've seen the Braves do it, just call guys straight up from Double-A. But if you can handle things at the Double-A level, I feel like you're pretty close to being ready for the big leagues. And I just think that's a big jump. So you don't want to rush that, especially with a young pitcher like Owen Murphy. But, if he continues to do what he's been doing, I know his last start wasn't quite as impressive, but, still he was able to work into the sixth inning, only gave up 2 runs. But if he continues to do stuff like that, I think he'd be up at Mississippi by the end of May. Isaac Rayfield says, with Chris Sale currently performing as advertised, do you think that he has a chance to be in the Cy Young conversation towards the end of the year, or will he be overshadowed by his own teammates? So this is another question I was trying to get in the first segment, but couldn't find it as I was doing things here on the fly. I don't know that Chris, I had a similar question about Ronaldo Lopez on this as well. I don't know that either of those guys get to the innings number to really be considered a contender for the Cy Young award. I just kind of have this feeling that the Braves are going to cap both of those guys at about 150 in the regular season. Maybe that's not the case. Look, Chris Sale's a veteran, and, Brian Snitker kind of lets his veterans do their thing. So maybe there is no innings limit there. I think you got to get to 170. I was trying to pull up real quickly what it was when Corbin Burns won his Cy Young. I think he threw 67 innings that year that he won the Cy Young. So I really think and it was debatable then, and he had just ridiculous numbers that season, which is why he won it, a 2.43 ERA, 0.94 whip, and 234 strikeouts that year. It has to be a dominant season, and you got to be around, at least, I think, 170 innings. And I just don't know if he reaches that. If he gets to 170 innings, he's got 220 strikeouts. He's got a ERA in the low 2s, a whip around 1. He's definitely going to be in that conversation. I also don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. He's a guy that hasn't pitched a lot. So could he do it? Does he have the stuff to do it? I mean, you look at the data for it right now, and he certainly is pitching like that. Can he keep it up for a full season for a guy that hasn't pitched a full season in a long time? Does he get to the innings to really be in the consideration? I think those would be the things holding him back. Last question here from Ted. What are the chances AA gets Mason Miller by the trade deadline from Oakland? Do you think we need him? Whether we need him or not, I would love to get him. A's would be dumb to trade him unless you're just getting an absolute haul for him, but the A's are a dumb organization. So maybe Alex can steal another one from them, but he is the most electric pitcher in baseball right now. So I would absolutely love for him to come over to the Braves. All right, that's all the questions that were submitted on social media. Thank you so much for sending those in. I know we're kind of at the end of it here, so don't really have time to preview this weekend series. But I will say this, with the way the Braves are playing, and the Dodgers, they kind of had their little skid earlier in the year, and they seem to be on track. But the way the Braves are playing coming into this, and the fact that, it's two of your worst starters and Morton and Elder going in this series in the first two games, I'll be honest, I'm kind of hoping the Braves get one win out of this and just come back home and get things together, because it's been rough here for the Braves as of late. But certainly that Sunday game with Max Fried on the mound against James Paxton seems like the one to circle for the Braves that they need to win. Charlie Morton can have a good game on Friday and the Braves can get to Gavin Stone, then I'll feel much better. But again, just with the way the two teams have been playing lately, I am hoping that they can get at least one win on the road against a good Dodgers team right now. Again, sometimes it's just when you're playing. Braves aren't playing their best right now. The Dodgers are playing pretty good baseball, and you're playing on the road, a place where the Braves haven't had a lot of success. So just give me one win, hopefully. Maybe we can sneak out another one. Love, obviously, to get a series victory. All right, thank you so much for joining me today, especially those live. We still got Brian McGrath in here, Wed in here as well, Leland, Jeffrey, CJ Palmer, Miguel, all of you kind of making it here to the end. I appreciate that. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button on YouTube. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at @LockedOn_Braves. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.